Welcome to the premiere episode of No Sleep Till. That's right, a show dedicated to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Reier, Evan Reier here with you. I guess you could
What
say,
up?
Evan, it's a little bit of Jag Reiers. Oh, the first of many dad jokes that Evan's had to endure over the years.
I was
Figured
gonna
I'd go
say
ahead, Ev, just blow it out there, get it out of the way, and then we can move on.
28 years of this, and now we get to uh, expand the I guess impact area. I don't know what you want to call it, but uh, no, yeah, this is exciting. This is really cool.
Yeah,
Something that
if it was
I
up
feel
to
like.
me,
Oh,
Evan's
go
heard
ahead.
this many times. His name would actually be Jag. Going
Yeah,
back
I have
to
heard this.
the naming process for Evan, I tried to sell his mom and my great wife, Heather, on Jag Reier because it was about the same time that the Jags were really coming into existence. 1996, you graced us with your presence right around this time. The
Their first
Jags
really
had
good season.
completed their first season in 1995. It was so well aligned, Evan. And no,
We can one day we can interview mom and make sure she can explain
yeah.
herself for not letting you just run with that. But
I
uh,
was thinking free
no, and
season tickets for
yeah,
life,
well, yeah, that's
If
I mean, between that or getting a tattoo, and Lord knows that a Jaguar tattoo is probably not the smartest investment. Maybe naming your kid is a little bit safer. Um, but no, it's this is something that I think we've been building up to for quite some time. We've often me and my father are both sports writers. He works for On Three Sports, covering Alabama football for them, and has a host of other projects and work. And I currently work for Heavy.com and do some stuff for Jaguar Report at Sports Illustrated. But we've both been working in sports writing for quite some time. Him considerably longer than me, and always have tried to figure out a project that we could maybe do. And I mean, what better than the Jaguars? The team that, if anything, is has been there since the jump for me, and then one that you grew up, or kind of grew up without, but into your adulthood have embraced the team as they came into existence.
yeah, much of my formative years was the talk about Jacksonville might get a team. Jacksonville might get a team. I was there in the old Gator Bowl for Colt Fever when it looked like perhaps the then Baltimore Colts, before they moved in the middle of the night from Baltimore to Indianapolis, would perhaps end up in Jacksonville. That, of course, did not happen. We had the Jacksonville Bulls, Bubba's Buddies, season tickets with Pops, and that south end zone in the old stadium for the USFL days. And then, of course, your formative years based largely on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And we were foundational season ticket holders when the team first came into existence. And then, as a family, we moved on to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, primarily for much of the next 20 years. So it's been a little bit of a full circle moment, I would say, Evan, no doubt about that. And look, the sort of premise of this show, as you can see, based on the title, No Sleep Teal, we're going to talk
Teal.
about some segments that we're looking for some answers to, right? We're literally sleepless. We're
Yeah,
insomniacs trying to get some answers to
I know
this
that's true.
franchise, Evan, and maybe a first ever run to a Super Bowl. And what we'll do today is we'll start with, because free agency, it's been an interesting stretch, right, Evan, for this Jacksonville Jaguars team. Some disappointments, I'd say, some twists and turns. See, Ridley, Calvin, and then
Yeah,
some good things. Eric Armstead. What?
yeah, for
Give me
sure.
a little bit of a wrap up on where you're at with free agency for the Jags as it sits right now.
It is, especially if you're on social media, the ebb and flow of, the reaction and stuff. Uh, it it wasn't exactly I wouldn't say it was a slam dunk with kind of their opening kind of set of signings. Just because guys like Darnell Savage are very solid players, but they're not necessarily household names. I think sometimes with some NFL fan bases, they want to see the name that they recognize or whatever, and they didn't necessarily get that in their opening wave of moves. But I do love the fact that they decided to reload in a sense at in the secondary by, I mentioned Darnell Savage, safety coming in, should have his prime in front of him. He's entering his 27-year-old season. You also have Ronald Darby, which is I think a really nice pickup. Darby had a great year last year. He's had, kind of a weird career. It's taken him to a few different places, and it hasn't always been positive. But again, I think that kind of veteran presence, if you're not going to roll with Darius Williams going into 2024, which they are not, that is not a bad pickup to replace him. Same thing with Savage and Rayshon Jenkins. Rayshon Jenkins is out of here, and that kind of takes care of the secondary, which was kind of such a big I think focus. Clearly, it's some of the first moves they made. You also have to go back and look at Mitch Morse, which 2022 Pro Bowler, a guy that Buffalo loved. If you go look on Bill's Twitter, you'll see a lot of people say, "Oh man, it really stinks that Mitch Morse is going." I'm sorry for my buddy Dom Tibbetts and the Buffalo fans, but generally that's what you want to see is, when you pick up a player in free agency, you want to see the other team go, "Oh dang, I wish we didn't lose them."
Kind of
Um,
like
you
Calais
know,
Campbell when he left
yeah,
Jacksonville,
exactly.
right? Same type of guy,
Yeah, for
just the
sure.
other line of scrimmage.
Yeah, 100%. In terms of kind of the last additions to round it out, you have Devin Duvernay coming in from Baltimore. That's a pretty interesting pick. He developed, or a pretty interesting pickup. He developed kind of into an offensive role there. He's definitely a special teams weapon first, but uh, he could, do some Jamal Agnew type stuff and maybe on a more consistent basis. And of course, if we're going to talk receivers, you have to bring up Gabe Davis, which even rather than getting into some of the other departures, I think we should focus in on that because he is in terms of money, he's their second biggest signing of free agency. Eric Armstead's got a slightly bigger contract, but only by about 4.5 million.
The Armstead numbers just came out, right? And they
Yeah,
didn't
they're
look
just
that
out.
they didn't look that crazy, I didn't think.
No, it's awesome. In terms of getting a guy like that who was due something like 27, 28 million last year with the 49ers, which is the whole reason why they let him go. It's not that they didn't think he could hack it anymore. It's more just, hey man, you cost too much. They tried to bring him back on a pay cut. He said no. If you guys are going to give me a pay cut, I'd rather go try my chances elsewhere. And sure enough, the Jaguars were able to kind of win that battle. It's interesting. The Texans had an amazing free agency window, and we'll talk about them in the context of the AFC South a little bit later. But a lot of the reports and rumors have basically said that the Texans played themselves out of the Eric Armstead pickup because of they added another defensive end, and then Eric Armstead saw that and was like, "Well, I'm not going to go there." Because he was supposed to be part of the trade with the 49ers that sent Malik Collins to the Texans. So it ended up being, the Texans kind of making a mistake, allowing the Jaguars to get Armstead.
Interesting, no doubt about it. And it kind of takes us back to our first segment of the premiere episode of No Sleep Till. No Sleep Till, Evan, wide receiver one is identified in this Jaguars offense. You talked about the Gabe Davis signing. This is a guy that can play on the outside, plays on the outside, has size that you like in a wide
Absolutely.
receiver at about 6'2, 210 pounds. But with Calvin Ridley moving on to the Tennessee Titans, um, does this team right now in its current construct with Christian Kirk, with the pieces that it has that we feel pretty confident will be around for the 2024 season, and understanding we still got the draft process that's ongoing. Do you feel like Gabe Davis, who yards per catch average and those things you really like, he's been north of 15 yards per catch throughout his
Oh yeah.
career in Buffalo? What about a wide receiver one, though, for this team?
I don't think they have their wide receiver one. I really hope that they don't think they have their wide receiver one. That is my concern when we talk about this with the Jags is that general manager Trent Baalke and crew are really convinced that this is a completely built wide receiver group because while I love Christian Kirk and I am actually pro Gabe Davis, not everyone has been huge on the signing due to, it's like, is that supposed to be our number one guy? I think Gabe Davis can be a really huge weapon for us, but um, I am hoping that as they approach the draft, that they really want to go get a top level talent. That even if he's not a number one, in 2024, he has the capability to be that. Um, it is that's kind of a gamble in a sense. But if the reports are true that they did try to trade for Brandon Ayuk, then clearly they do believe that they still need a number one. Now, if that was all just conjecture and what have you, but that's not there were some pretty big names in the NFL Spears reporting on that. If they actually tried to make a move for Ayuk, then it makes me think that they still think they need a number one. In that setting, I think you'll see Zay Jones depart if they do. Let's say, make a trade for Ayuk still, or if they, really do go for a number one receiver. In those trade reports, Zay Jones was supposed to be a piece going towards the 49ers in exchange. I think really, number one spot not taken. Christian Kirk at number two, Gabe Davis at number three, and Evan Ingram is in that tight end role where he's kind of a number two, 2B, so to speak. But
Yeah,
that's kind of where I think they're at.
yeah, it's interesting because when you look at that situation and you think about it, even with Calvin Ridley, is Calvin Ridley a true wide receiver one? I'm not convinced he is, and I've covered Calvin at Alabama. I've watched him really throughout the end of his high school days in South Florida, all the way through the SEC into the National Football League. I'm not convinced they had that guy with Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, I wasn't either. I don't. I still think there are a lot of Jaguars fans that, when he departed, when he left for the Titans, I saw a lot of people bringing up he runs the wrong routes, all that different stuff. I thought we debunked those rumors that he didn't know what routes to run, but the fact of the matter is that he just wasn't quite there. He's a
Which
great
was
number two.
understandable given the break he was coming off of,
Yeah,
right?
sure, absolutely. And that's why, I think it made just as much sense to keep him as to try and go get a different guy to be the top dog. The problem is like you
So you
still
would
need
have
to go get
franchised him
that.
and tried to get the deal done with Josh Allen.
Yeah, without trying to get too over the top with the criticism, like that is easily the number one mistake that the Jaguars have made this offseason is not getting the deal done with Josh Allen because everything else is dominoed from that. In that setting, you go sign Gabe Davis to go along with Calvin Ridley, and sure, you may not have an out and out number one, but you've got at that point between him, Kirk, Gabe Davis, you've got three guys that'll make plays.
Bottom line, you're
Um,
better with Calvin Ridley than
yeah,
without him
for sure.
right now, especially.
Again, and who knows if they go, nail a wide receiver in the first three rounds of the draft, or if they still make that move, then all's well that ends well. We don't, we won't even really, a year or two from now, we won't even be thinking about it that hard. But as things stand right now on this day, it is, it definitely feels like a blunder. It really does, like letting him
Gabe
walk.
Davis, does he
Um,
have a little bit of a poor man's Mike Evans feel to you? A little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. He's not, what's crazy about Gabe Davis is that he actually plays bigger than he is. I mean, he's 6'2, 225. That's a big guy. But, Mike Evans at 6'5,
Yeah.
it's kind of nuts to watch how good Gabe Davis is at high pointing the ball downfield. That's that. And, when we say downfield, like you said, with his yards per catch, that is his whole thing. You are not going to see Gabe Davis
And
running
win
a
the
lot of
50-50 balls. Yeah.
yeah, like you're not going to see Gabe Davis, getting a lot of screen opportunities or slants or anything like that. Really anticipate them saying, okay, Christian Kirk will come underneath. Evan Ingram's also, coming across. They love the crossers. Gabe can be a guy that's going down the field on a post or on a go or a leak or whatever, and make something happen. And I think his kind of reputation in Buffalo is big game Gabe. I think that's something that Jaguars fans really need to hold on to for optimism. If nothing else, this guy's performance in big games when it
What was it?
matters
4
most.
touchdowns against the Chiefs in a game with the Bills?
Yeah, in 2021, the he in total This guy has averaged in playoff games alone. This guy has averaged 67.7 yards per game on 3 catches, and has scored 6 total playoff touchdowns in 7 games. Now, 4 of those came against the Chiefs, but the point being is that even if he's not catching touchdowns in big games, he's making catches, he's making plays, and even as much as I love Calvin Ridley, something we kind of anticipated him doing was stretching the field, and that's not actually where I think he was that beneficial for the Jaguars this past year. He's such a fantastic route runner that there were plenty of times where he was able to get open 15 to 20 yards down the field, but there weren't that. I wouldn't say it was more than maybe once every 2 games that he was going on a deep route and making a catch, and it's a 50 to 60 yard grab. That was part of the the issue with the Jaguars offense was they were terrible at running the ball, but then and that sets
They
up
made up
everything
for
else.
it by not stretching the field.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I like to think that at the very least, Gabe Davis provides something that the Jags didn't have before he arrived, and also not to mention only 25 years old. This is a guy that still ought to have some of his best work in front of him, and overall has had an extremely healthy NFL career so far. So,
So
well, yeah,
as we
go
sit
ahead.
here on March 20th, your anticipation would be a wide receiver has his name called by the Jacksonville Jaguars within the first 3 rounds of the draft next month, maybe as
You
early as
know,
that number 17.
the verbiage that I want to use here is not that I predict that they will, but they better. I know that sounds maybe a little too entitled or whatever, but I just really don't see how you can go the first 3 rounds without a receiver, especially when you consider how good this receiver class is.
Yeah, good year.
You know, I mean, it is insane. And you could have the logic of, oh well, because I'm not getting Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison, maybe we should wait until the
Redundancy.
late rounds. And sure, if a guy that you have pegged as like a second or third round pick is available at the end of round 3, then try and go get him in round 4. It doesn't have to be in the first 3 rounds, but man, the idea of getting at that number 17 spot, someone like Rome Odunze or Brian Thomas Jr. or even Adonai Mitchell. I would take
Yeah.
that. These are all guys that are really exciting prospects to watch, and I think the number 17 overall pick really is a good spot to get a receiver. It's also just as equally a good spot to get a corner though, which is where most of the mock drafts have the Jags going in the first round.
And speaking of which, no Sleep Teal. The Jaguars solidify the back end of that defense. Ryan Nielsen in as the new defense coordinator, changes expected, Evan, in terms of scheme and approach, going to be less zone oriented, going to be more
Yep.
aggressive, going to ask those corners and DBs to man up. Uh, it's a shift change. And I think there's guys like Tyson Campbell you think about as pieces back there. In Tyson's background, even at Georgia with Kirby Smart, Kirby asks
Yeah.
those corners to play man coverage a lot, just like Nick Saban does. And so maybe that's why we hear Terry and Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry, some important pro days today as well around college football. Alabama, speaking of those guys, having its pro day on this Wednesday. So is that where your sort of focus is right now, just more so at those positions? And do you think this work that we've seen from the Jags in free agency to this point is helped address some of that?
Yeah, I think those free agency pickups of Darby and Savage, as we mentioned, are really solid. They're not stars, but they're really solid. They are clearly betting on Tyson Campbell. They really want him to be that guy, and due to he was so banged up last year that I kind of want to give him a pass for a pretty rough season. Honestly, when he hit the field, it was not great, but in the years before that, there was plenty of reason for optimism and to even think that this guy could maybe even reach like all pro status. So yeah, I think though, while I like their movement, it is such a definite clear need. Like, and it matches up where the two I guess mentalities of drafting is the player at the position you need or the best player available. Corner is probably the one that will sync up the best for the Jags, where they will get the most talented guy, someone like Terry and Arnold, and also be able to address a position that they desperately need to address. I made the joke about they better draft a receiver. I'm confident, like first 2 rounds, they won't walk away without a corner unless they make an unforeseen trade move. They will absolutely go get a top talent at corner, and we'll see how that goes. Just recently, Daniel Jeremiah over at NFL.com just mocked Terry and Arnold to the Jags. I would love it. I love Terry. The way he played this past year was exceptional. I think he's kind of not just an upside guy, but clearly his floor is NFL ready. There's other names to consider too, but he is kind of Arnold's in an interesting spot. The gap between him and Kool-Aid is kind of the gap in the talent, like at least in how they're being perceived right now. As you mentioned, the pro days could definitely affect things.
Kool-Aid did run the 40 today, and that was big for him, Evan. And his splits were between 4.45
Missed
and
it.
4.55. So
Okay,
4.5-ish
that's not.
corner. Terrian ran again today in Tuscaloosa and was still right around that 4.5 mark, like he was in
Yeah,
Indianapolis at the combine. Terrian showed you this year, though, positional versatility. Can play on the outside, can play that slot corner if you need to move him in there. This was really the first year we saw him at that star position. This is a guy that we wondered about coming out of Tallahassee as a high school player, if he might be more of a safety. So he can check some different boxes. Kool-Aid's speed was a concern, plus the foot injury that he was
right.
dealing with. But I think he checked some boxes in Tuscaloosa. Both those guys should
Yeah,
be
that
fine. But you do like, of those two, you like Terrion.
I think if you're gonna go first round and you're not gonna like try and trade back up into the first, which the Jags have done multiple times in the past few years, that's an option. But I think Tyrion is just the guy that I would want to see. Kool-Aid is probably one of the most intelligent corners we've seen. He has his misses and different things, and
He's a
that's
dog
mostly
too.
due.
He is
Yeah,
a
he's a dog. Like
competitive dude.
he most of his like shortcomings that you saw this past year were due to the thing that we already knew about, which is he is athletic, but he's not a like otherworldly athlete. Whereas Tyrion Arnold kind of has a little bit more of that stuff. The fact that Kool-Aid ran that 40 under, or split got under 4 or 5 on one side, that is huge. I mean, he desperately needed that, I think, to maybe solidify himself as a first round pick, because there's a lot of mocks right now that have him dropping into the early second. Which it depends on do we see a run on corners, do we see a run on whatever position, that'll affect a lot of stuff. But if I had to go right now, I think I'd want Tyrion. I know that Kool-Aid probably, they say to scout traits, not stat, don't go back off the best year, go off of their traits, all those different signs. I'm sorry, Tyrion played so well this past year that I can't help but if he's available at that spot, I'm gonna want him.
I think you're good with either one of them. And I know that's fence riding. And I say that because I think Kool-Aid will go into the league with the higher floor. I think there's a really good possibility that he's the better player early in his career. But with Terrion, I think his best football is still in front of him. And that's exactly goes back to kind of what you're talking about. And Terrion Arnold, yeah, it's a 4.5 40, but this was a guy coming out of high school, was such a good basketball player, could have easily played high major college basketball. In fact, part of
Right.
his commitment to Alabama was based on two sports. He was going to play football and basketball for Nate Oates. That tells you the athleticism involved there with Terrion Arnold.
Yeah.
Now, as we get into our third and final segment, Evan, on the premiere episode of No Sleep Teal, I got to ask you about this window that we thought the Jags were in the window
We thought.
for a championship. And it certainly looked that way. And then along comes the finish to the 2023 season that coincides with my guy D'Amico Ryans working the magic out in Houston, along with CJ Stroud, Will Anderson, and all this excitement, and really feels like not so much just a talent infusion in H Town, but just a sort of culture. Like, bam, Houston almost overnight implements this championship culture with a first year head coach and a first year starting quarterback. Um, what has to happen? Is the window as we thought? Was it only like 6 months and it's already closed, or is there still at least a crack where we can get this thing back open in Jacksonville?
Well, it's I guess I have like 2 points to this. One, just based on, you can say whatever you want of like, oh well, I like our roster better, or, oh, I like this better, or whatever. Texans won the division last year and look dangerous in the playoffs. They are CJ Stroud. Like, you cannot, at least going into 2024, it is the Texans division for right now. Absolutely. That being said, the AFC South has always been crazy. And just as, going into wrapping up the season last year, where the Titans were the team that were supposed to be, they had their window. Their window was still open. And then the Jags are the team to win 6 of their last 7. Titans blow it. I'm not saying we're going to see the same exact thing happen again, but right now there are, like, I would say the Jags and Texans are both in very optimistic spots. Even the Titans and Colts are in competitive places. Like, the division right now, is super wide open. So I say all that to say, do I think the window is closed? No, but I don't even know if it's a window situation. I literally think it's kind of dogfight right now. Like, I don't know. I think the Texans have the edge, but we've also, how severe have the injuries been for the Texans the past 2 years? Now, they were able to get through it last year, and that's insane. Like, I give them full credit for that. But they continue to have injury problems with their franchise, just like as like the Ravens do. Like, there is still so many variables that I am not willing to say that the window is closed, but I'm also not confident enough to say that it's going to, it's there for the Jags to take, because really I think this is this regime's kind of make or break year. I mean, I think everyone involved, unless they pay Trevor this offseason, which, there's a very real chance that they do. I think for Doug and Trent, this is kind of it. Like, if they don't make the playoffs this year, I think that's their job.
That's what it goes back to for me. You talked about it, Trevor, and that rookie
Yeah,
deal that is now very quickly set to
coming to an
expire.
end. Yeah,
I think they have until May 2nd to go ahead and take the team option for the 5th year.
right, for
So
next year. Yeah,
that gets you a couple more seasons. But it feels like they lost a year last season
yeah,
on that window based on that rookie deal and the freedom it gives you, the flexibility it gives you to do some different things with your team to really fortify your team as a playoff contender. And again, we're talking about a window within the division. We're not even getting outside of the division when we talk about this. We're
yeah.
not talking about KC.
Super Bowls.
No, we're not.
Yeah,
We're talking about the AFC South
see South.
window. And I can
Yeah,
appreciate anyone that is in that sort of boat of anybody but the Titans, ABTT, I call it. I'm with you. But
yep.
the Texans,
It,
they look
they're
like they're going to be a
dangerous.
problem for a while.
I mean, they've something that Jags fans, like I mentioned those injury issues, mentioned some of the decisions they made before D'Amico Ryans got there. Jags fans loved to clown on Nick Caserio, their GM, and here we are, like 2 years later, and it seems like all their draft picks have panned out, all their free agency stuff has panned out. D'Amico Ryans is a slam dunk hire, which I think that was, I'm not giving Nick Caserio that much credit because D'Amico was going to get hired somewhere and he was clearly ready for that. But former Texan, I mean, everything worked out. Like, they are kind of experiencing the, like, the storybook telling of their franchise right now. And the Jags have thought that we've gotten, we thought we were close to that a few different times now, but still kind of waiting for that to happen, where it all, we've got a hometown hero story, all that different stuff. But yeah, it's
I know
I
some
think it's their division.
Jag slash Alabama fans a couple of years ago. They wanted the Jags to hire D'Amico or they wanted
Yeah.
Alabama to hire D'Amico because then that would have prevented him from going to Houston and he'd be the coach at Alabama. So
It would have been nice, but
we'll see what happens
it's
with all that.
uh, yeah, it is what it is. I think the biggest criticism about the Jaguars, and this is more specifically Trent Baalke, um, during kind of this stretch, you mentioned that they feel like they wasted a year with Trevor. Um, they spent so much money on the defense. They spent so much money on the defense for it to be
Mid.
pretty much less than mediocre the past 2
Yeah.
years. That is, I don't want to use the word damning, but it's not far from that word because, like you just said, like you said, you've got a quarterback playing for $2 to $3 million, whatever the number is. I get it. Let's go make a defense that can absolutely, win us games. Like that's going to keep us in games. And in some ways, it did pay off. But man, to not have your number one receiver entering year 4 with Trevor, to not have an offensive line that you feel comfortable about, and then the thing that you actually invested in to then be releasing guys like Rayshon Jenkins and Foley Fatukasi, who they paid a huge check to. Like this is it is definitely, I mean, the trail is littered with mistakes. Now, forgive and forget if just win, baby. That's
All it
the phrase,
takes
right?
is
Just win.
a
Yeah,
run
just
in
go win games.
2024. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
at the same time, right now, hindsight is painting it in a very bad light. So, if this season is a dud, then you've got all these other questions to answer, and is Trevor part of the next regime? Do you want that to happen? Where are the Jags drafting? Let's, my mind's racing. I don't even want to think about a year from now. I want to
Yeah,
believe
because
that what we're doing right now
all
is,
it takes is a perceived successful draft and
yeah,
everybody's back on, man.
everyone's
That's
back.
the genius of the NFL. The genius of the
No,
National Football League is there are different stages of the year in which the worst team, the fans of the worst team in the league can feel like we got a W.
oh
And the
yeah.
draft is one
Well,
of those. You don't even need
you
the
know,
season. You can just have a good draft and you feel great about it.
the thing is that the Jaguars don't have enough draft resources right now to really be thinking about trading up in the first. But if they wanted to convince me and everyone else that everything's going to be amazing, trade up in the first for like Malik Neighbors,
Who
and it's like that's probably a waste of resources because you could just go get another first round talent at your spot. But literally doing something like that, and everyone would lose their minds and go, "We're so back. We've never been this back." But yeah, we'll see. I mean, really, day one, if it's a corner, everyone's going to go, nice, cool. That's not super exciting. But if they go receiver in the first round, I think everybody will shut up, whether they should or not. They just will be excited about the idea of, hey, we're getting the receiver. But yeah, we've
Xavier
got some.
Worthy from Texas with the
Yeah,
17th pick,
hey,
160
he's fast,
pounds.
man. He's
He
very
can
fast.
fly. He can flat out fly. And you want to
I
talk
don't know if
about
he can
those
catch the ball,
Alabama
but he
defensive
can.
backs? They got to see his taillights a few times in Tuscaloosa last season. So
Oh yeah, that was fun.
dude
Not
can
not for
run.
me, but it was fun for Texas fans, I guess. But
Yeah.
um,
Tough dude to
no,
cover.
it is there is tension in Jacksonville, and it's weird. Like basically since the season ended, we've had to just sit here for 2.5 months, 3 months, and just kind of feel like what's going
Yeah.
to happen or whatever. But I would give free agency if I had to grade it. If we had to put grades on it, give the free agency window a B minus. Um, as long as we get a B on the draft, I'll feel okay.
There you go. Closing statements, maybe some thoughts about some other teams around the league, some players with maybe Jag ties and some of the movement that we've seen here in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. We're noting that Dewan Smoot is still not re-signed and also hasn't signed anywhere else. Um, that's primarily due to the fact that he's kind of had trouble getting on the field with injuries, and when he has been on the field, he hasn't necessarily been producing at the encouraging rate that he was in his first few seasons. But definitely still a name to watch out. I wouldn't completely rule out Dewan Smoot coming back, but it's definitely one to watch because that's one that I thought when he wasn't re-signed initially that he would absolutely get picked up somewhere, but he's still a free agent. So is Jamal Agnew. Also, wanted to, I guess, look after, see where he might end up.
What about a kicker, man? Jags thought they had one, didn't, and now looks like they do have a kicker, I guess.
Joey Sly.
Love
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it.
Love that
Yeah,
name.
it's such a good name. I'm gonna buy the
Got to
jersey.
be
No,
automatic if your name's Joey Sly.
Joey Sly. It's Joey Sly is one of those guys that perfectly represents like the NFL kicking scene right now, where there's like 50 guys that just kind of rotate, like between having a job and not having a job, between being the starter and not being the starter. I mean, he played for 3 teams in 2021 before kind of getting settled with the Washington Commanders, where he's been solid. I mean, it's not super impressive, but it's also not. Um, uh, super discouraging. I would say the only thing that's pretty discouraging is my man's got less than 90% extra point career make percentage.
It's weird with some of
Um,
those. There's a few guys, it seems like, that struggle with the extra point these days more than they do, say, 54 yarders.
yeah, I mean he's missed 7 over the past 2 years with Washington, which feels like a lot. Um, at the same time, his make percentage with Washington was in terms of just from actual place kicks, whatever, 85%. That's fine. You take that, as long as he's not missing the chip shots. But that's the problem is that he
Yeah.
seems to miss some chip shots. But
33
um,
basically on a extra point. That
yeah,
definitely
I mean
qualifies.
yeah. So it's fine. I mean, I don't think that there was really a guy for them to go get. I wouldn't rule out them drafting a kicker like 7th or 6th. Like just if there is a serious talent coming out of the college game, which to be honest with you, other than maybe 1 or 2 guys, I really don't know that many kickers in college football. So I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe try and set up a competition. But at the same time, you have to decide to do that going into the draft. If they don't do that, then you start up practice. He might not look great when they get out there, and then you have to go sign another free agent and set up that whole thing. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see about Joey Sly.
We'll have plenty as we continue to offer up installments of No Sleep Teal. To you again real soon.